glad you're with us tonight, and I'm very excited to be here. And if you're joining us live on Facebook and YouTube, then please, by all means, like and subscribe. And here's the thing that we wanted to encourage people to do. So we needed some more. What was that we needed more people to sign up for?
To join the Facebook page.
Yeah, we need to hit 100, right? And we're in our 80s. So here's my request. If you're not following us or what have you, then please, by all means, go to Destination Freedom's page and like us and follow us in that way so we can hit 100. Now, I believe we can hit 100 immediately if you're supportive of that. If you like to see more of our content, we're glad to commit to that. And and we've got a lot of things that are in play that we're trying to become really good at, and that's our social media. I've got Michael; he's really been helpful, and so we're trying to ride that wave and learn those things that we haven't we have no knowledge of. So we're figuring that stuff out, and we're staying busy, and that's all playing out. So we're glad that you're here and are going to be a part of this. I want to talk about some things coming up. Do we have links for that hackers or the nonconformist? No? All right. If you go to, we have the Anarchapulco page though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you go to anarchapulco.com and they'll have on that page, they'll have a nonconformist type of. We have a virtual event coming up, and I'm part of that. I'm excited about that. But the purpose of that event is really to give people hands-on, real, tangible things that you can do to be, what we would call outside the matrix, or to be self-sufficient and things like that. So there's going to be some powerful content on the nonconformist program, which is coming up at the end of the month. So by all means, go to anarchapulco.com. We'll get the nonconformist link, and then we'll have that for you either on this one or some future videos. So that's coming up towards the end of May. And then coming up in June is the Pork Fest, which is the Free State Project's summer event. And we're going to have a pretty good presence there. We're going to be in the what was the tent? The exit tent, the exit lounge. That's what we're in. We're in the exit lounge. Join us in the exit lounge, and we're going to have a presence there. We're going to have a table set up with a lot of our contact information, things we want to hand out, and all that. And then we're going to do a few talks, daily talks at the Pork Fest. That's going to be at 11 o'clock in the exit lounge. Also doing a talk in the morning, early morning, at the Freedom 101 location at Pork Fest. We'll figure out where that's going to be. We have an idea that's above the game room at Rogers Campground. Now that's where the Pork Fest is going to take place at Rogers Campground in Lancaster, New Hampshire. And so we'll be there. Also, I understand Jeff's going to be up there for that event. That's going to be exciting to hang out with him again. And then we're going to be able to share from main stage. So I'm looking forward to doing that presentation and invite people to easily unplug from sending money to the scum crud in Washington, D.C. Won't that be a great thing to be a part of? And you too can keep 100% of your money if you want. So that's coming up in June. I don't know if we have any other plans beyond that. Got some possibility, but anyway, that's what we have on our plate right now. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you, being with you, and spending some of that time. Today or tonight, we're going to talk about really the mindset of the 14th Amendment. And So some of the work that I've been working on is the naturalization process in the states. So that's been some interesting read. And so in that we went to the archives in New Hampshire, and I wanted to read the journals, the House and Senate journals of when the 14th Amendment presented itself for consideration toward the legislature in New Hampshire, and I took pictures of those journals and was looking over and studying some of that. I was going to mention a couple things that I saw in that. That's not the one. I wonder if I kept it here. So so anyway, yeah, that's. I wonder if I left that on my desk. That won't be very good. I think it's under here. Oh yeah, it's right here. So, but it's interesting to see when the 14th Amendment came in. I'm of the opinion that the 14th Amendment was not ratified properly, and there's a number of reasons, not just uh, for what it said and what it was doing. It's very difficult. And it's supposed to be this way. It's very difficult to ratify the Constitution. Okay, it takes a lot of political energy to do that, and part of that is because if a bill is drafted, or let's say an amendment to the Constitution is created in the uh, in the Congress, it has to be it has to begin either in the Senate or in the House. It's either a Senate bill or a House bill, and then they have to um, vote on it. It has to pass the House and the Senate, and then be presented to the president as a bill would. Any bill would be in Washington. Then, if it's going to ratify or it's going to amend the Constitution, it's got to be sent out to the states for the states to approve it, because the states, contrary to popular belief, are in charge of everything that happens in Washington, D.C. Imagine that. That ultimately the states are responsible. The federal government gets away with what it does because the states are complicit, is my humble opinion. We wouldn't have any kind of, like the Civil War, like we did years ago, if the states would just do what they're supposed to do. And so by reading some of that information about the 14th Amendment, it just was. Let me see if I can turn this on. Let's see if that's going to be a little bit of light there. At least I'll be able to see. You know what? I must have my glasses there. So yeah, these are important aids. But when one of the first things that it said in here, um, it says resolved by Senate and House of Representatives in the general court concerned that the following article proposed uh, proposed by a joint resolution of Congress to be submitted to the legislatures of the several states as an amendment of the Constitution of the United States be ratified and adopted by the legislature of New Hampshire as an amendment to and a part of the Constitution of the United States, namely Article 14, Section 1, and then it reads, and you can read the language just the way you read the 14th Amendment, which has one section, two section, and I'll just read the first section. As you know, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So that's the first section, and then there's more there. I love section 4, which it should set up a red flag. Now, here's the thing about amending this. If when voting for this, let's say when you're voting on this, that there, and here it is with 5 sections. Let's say you love this. It's a great amendment, except for number 4. And let's say number 4, you're going to see what it says. Let's see if it has any ramifications today, although this would be interesting. But here's what it said. The validity of public debt, the validity of public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrections or rebellion shall not be questioned. See, the moment that the stupid politicians write the words "shall not be questioned," that should set up red flags immediately. It's like, what? This is going to go back to John Adams when the sedition, the Aliens and Sedition Act, where he didn't like it when people were talking bad about the federal government that they had newly created. You can't talk bad about them. Listen, if you that should be an indication that something's wrong. If you can't criticize anybody, is there anything around today that we can't criticize? Wonder what that would be. That's how you know it's screwed up. So in the context of public debt, in any capacity, public debt shall not be questioned. That should raise flags. So let's say you loved everything, but that's the part where you said, nah, we can't have that. Questioning things, that's got to always be on the plate in everything governmental. And so let's say you didn't want to vote for it because that part's going to go along with it. So it's not likely that this amendment to the Constitution would pass unless there was a majority in the legislature that says, oh, yeah, we love every bit of it. Not likely. And so when I'm reading in this journal, and this is in the journal, just to let you know, these journals are in the archives at the State House. And actually, it's not in the State House. They're in the archives on Fruit Street in Concord, New Hampshire. But this is the Journal of the House, Tuesday, June 26th, 1866. Now, this was ratified in 1868. That's when it finally was completed, or allegedly that they said it was ratified. So New Hampshire had it in 1866. And so, and I won't get into all of this, but it was kind of cool to just take a look at. So I don't fully understand this, but it looks like it says, now this is what the journal says. The joint resolution was read once and ordered to be a second reading. That's cool. See, they read it once, they want to read it again. And again, with the parliamentary procedure, someone's got a motion that they read it again, someone's got to second it, and then they vote to read it again. That's how this stuff happens. It says the minority of the same committee. Now, when they say the minority, so the majority would have voted for something, and a minority would have been the ones that lost. Okay. It says the minority in this of the same committee presented the following report, which was read on motion of Mr. Page of Warren, was ordered to be printed. So they wanted to print this minority opinion. House of Representatives, June session 1866 says the undersigned, a minority of the selection committee on the national affairs, to whom was referred the message of His Excellency the Governor, with an attested copy of a resolution of Congress entitled "A Joint Resolution Proposing an Amendment to the Constitution of the United States," unquote. Here they said, being unable to agree to the report of the majority of said committee in favor of the ratification of the proposed amendment, begged to leave to offer the following among reasons for their dissent. And then they go into 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10 points of why they couldn't vote for ratification. Actually, there's 11, 12, 13 points in which they didn't want, the minority said, we don't want to vote for this amendment. Here, how do you like this one? Here's number three reasons why we should have Dave Letterman on here with number three reason why we shouldn't amend this particular part of the Constitution. It says number three, because the inevitable result of frequent amendments to the organic law is to pave the way by gradual steps, increasing as they proceed, to the unsettling and ultimate destruction of the beautiful and symmetrical fabric left by us by the patriots of the Revolution. Like they recognize that this is going to be continuing down a pathway of destroying the beauty of what the founders had put together. That was number three of why not to vote for the 14th Amendment. Now, this is New Hampshire. This is not a southern state, okay? How about this, number five? I won't read it all. Because the proposed amendment is ambiguous and contradictory in its provisions. So, oh, so that's great. What they were saying is the first section prohibiting any state from abridging the privileges of citizens of the United States, the right of suffrage being claimed as one of those privileges, and the second section, by inference, allowing the states to restrict the right of suffrage if willing to submit to the consequent disabilities. Again, they're recognizing that this was not a good thing. And number six says, because the amendment is a dangerous infringement upon the rights and independence of all the states. Because you notice in this amendment that not only was it saying what the federal government would do or what was they were offering, but that they were saying that the states, if they vote for this, the states, how it reads, let me just read that again. No state, see right here. See, yeah, here it is. The language is that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So they want the states to sign off on their own limitation, right? Now, what do we know about power? Frederick Douglass says power concedes nothing without a demand. That alone about the limitations of the states is it tells me that there's no way that they would have a majority of states vote off on this and limit themselves. They don't usually do that. And the other thing is that's just like the 17th Amendment. When the legislatures picked senators to be in the Congress instead of the general election, the House in Congress, the House is made up of representatives of the people. The Senate is made up of the states, 2 senators from every state. And so the 17th Amendment, which I don't believe was ratified just by its content alone, the states aren't going to say, yeah, let's see, this body, the legislature, yeah, we don't want to be interested in what treaties our government is signing and when the Senate votes for the appointments of certain bodies and all, yeah, we don't want to deal with that pesky Congress. We don't have time for that. We're just going to let the people in our state vote for senators instead of us appointing them. See, that never happened, and nor do I think it ever would. But 17th Amendment comes in, and now you have senators popularly elected. That's just crazy. So anyway, just reading this journal. So I thought that was interesting. And now I've not read and have not found the place in the journal where the vote was taken and that New Hampshire ratified the 14th Amendment. I haven't found that in the journal yet, and I'm looking for that because I want to read the language. Matter of fact, I'd love to read the majority sentiment of why they thought the 14th Amendment was a good idea. Then anyway, so when I'm talking about the 14th Amendment to people, I'm always thinking it's a liability. Like, who wants to be a federal citizen? Who wants to have an income tax liability? I don't know that it's a good thing. And not only does it deal with that this citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof, they're subject to anything the federal government does. Same thing as like, if you don't want the Second Amendment to apply to your ability to keep and bear arms, then you can be a federal citizen in which federal gun laws are going to govern how you handle firearms and all that, because that's what the Constitution says in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The federal government has exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever in their jurisdiction, in that 10 square miles, which is Washington, D.C. So this is why I say many times, do you believe the federal government is upholding the Constitution? I believe they are. Sad to say, because the Constitution gave them the power to do the screwy job they're doing now. That's why I'm not a union guy. That's why I'm all done. That's why New Hampshire's enough for me. I don't want to send any good people back to D.C. for them to be irrelevant or wasting their life and their time, like the Honorable Ron Paul did for years and years. Doctor No, look how difficult that was for him, and yet from the beginning of his, of him being in office to today, how are we doing? We're worse off. He warned us about foreign entanglements and things like that. He said for years to audit the Fed. The Fed. We got this guy in here, the plug puller for the deep state, Trump. That's it. That's the other name I was going to give him. Alleged plug puller for the swamp, draining the swamp. And then, of course, I've always called him the pacifier. The pacifier. Be careful if you're enjoying the nookie, the little pacifier. Be careful that's your love that pacifier. He's our guy. Yeah, it's just crazy talk. But anyway, so getting into looking at the 14th Amendment, the now, small. Anyway, yeah, you don't want to rub those MAGA people wrong. It's like this. I have a hat that says "Make Sonar Great Again." That's good. Anyway, no, listen, I support everything Trump says. Yeah, he's a good talker. I mean, I'd love for him to audit the Fed. I'd love for him to do all the things that he said he was going to do. It'd be a big game changer if that happened. Yeah, it's not likely, is it?
He says a lot of bad things.
He said, well, he does. I was just generalizing. I like all the good things. It's the same way I feel about the Supreme Court. Like, listen, I can answer. The Supreme Court's really easy. Everywhere the Supreme Court has secured rights, good. Everywhere the Supreme Court has violated rights, of no authority, you can ignore them. Because listen, your rights are inalienable. You don't allow people in black dresses to determine what your rights are. But here's the problem: if you don't know what your rights are, you're going to be hell bent to try to figure out how to secure them. Really? If you think privileges are rights, you're going to have a hard time trying to figure out how to secure other people giving you shit. That's not really going to work that way. But anyway, I'll tell you, time was flying when we were in the archives because I was enjoying just reading some of the sentiment about certainly the 14th Amendment. Then I got into a little bit today about, the 14th Amendment. So if you look up advocates of the 14th Amendment or not, now, and I came across this, I guess it was somebody was making reference to the Southern Poverty League, which is a liberal group. And listen how they talk about the opposition to the 14th Amendment, like as if the 14th Amendment is a good thing. I don't think it is a good thing. Okay. And so they say in here, listen to this language. It says, like other extremists, neo-Confederates are questioning the constitutional amendment that gave black citizenship, but the courts have consistently rejected their arguments. So the idea of the 14th Amendment being ratified. I'm not saying the 14th Amendment wasn't ratified because it's not a good idea to give black citizenship. Okay. Here's what I believe about the blacks that were already in the South. Okay. They didn't need the federal government to give them citizenship. The problem was almost universally was they weren't considering these people as people. That's the breakdown, folks. You don't have to give, like, for example, women's suffrage. Did the white guys, did the men give the women the right to vote? No, it never happened. They always had that equality. The government was just oppressing them. The government needed to get out of the way. It wasn't that they needed something. You don't grant rights. You only grant privileges. And so so they just got to recognize that these, there's the line in the 1776. So here's a good one for you to watch. Be sure to watch the musical 1776. It's very good. It's intelligent. It's wonderful. But I love the line. One of the lines in there is like when they're wanting to free the slaves then, when they were originally writing the Declaration of Independence. And he says, and so they were, John Adams is engaging with one of the Southern representatives, and he says, "Are you referring to our black slaves as Americans?" And I love John Adams says, "They're people and they're here. I know of no other qualification." I love that. And that's exactly what should have happened in the South, is that just recognize that these people that are born there are on an equal footing as anybody else that's there. They didn't need to give them anything. They didn't need to give them something. They already had it. It was natural, and they were born with it. If they were born in those states, then they were American. End of story, full stop. Like today, if you're born in America, you have citizenship, and that's the way it should have been. The federal government should not have been allowed to be handing out citizenship in their jurisdiction, and yet Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 gives them the power to do that. They really didn't even need an amendment, but that's the case. But listen to this sentiment here. So they're talking. They're 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 saying here the league claims that the southern states were. Well, let me back up here. So I don't know. So it says, calling the 14th Amendment the most nefarious consequence of Reconstruction, the Neo-Confederate League of the South attacks the validity of the amendment on the grounds that its ratification was fraudulent. But this is what's powerful. It says the league claims that the southern states were coerced into accepting the amendment, and that without this coercion, there would have been not enough states to ratify the amendment. Therefore, the argument goes, the passage of the amendment was illegal or was illegitimate. And of course it is. You can't compel people or force a vote or force a signature. If you're pointing guns at people and think you're going to think that you got something good going because you're forcing them, it's illegitimate. That's why I don't like this whole common law thing with what is it? The Magna Carta, and they say, well, King John signed the Magna Carta. He signed it at sword point. Was it valid then? No. And did the Magna Carta change the aristocrats and the nobles and the people? No, it never did. It just made it a kinder, gentler tyranny. What a bunch of junk. And so that if they're alleging that they were being coerced into accepting the 14th Amendment, that's not a good thing, folks. Regardless of the subject matter. It says the Neo-Confederates Neo-Confederates, what that means, like there were the Union and then there was the Confederacy. The whole Union is a confederacy. It's a confederation of states. And so the Southern rebels or whatever, that they're alleging that these are the Confederates, the Southern states. So the new Southerners or the new Confederates, that's Neo. The Neo-Confederates raised an interesting point. Now listen to this. The process of ratifying the 14th Amendment did involve strong-arm tactics. Southern states were granted re-entry into the Union only on the condition that they ratify the amendment. So if they walked out, the point is, if they walked out of the Union, there was no Union. And that's why many people believe that there were not enough states. And I read this in some of these arguments that there were disenfranchised states, and therefore they didn't have a union. They didn't have a majority to ratify the 14th Amendment. And so that's a pretty good argument, regardless of the subject matter of the amendment. So anyway, and they'll get into all that. So what I did was I got into online, and this is something I'm going to study. I'm not going to get into it today, but I have basically the Declaration of secession or independence that Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas and Virginia wrote about their reasoning for leaving the Union. And as I'm reading it, I see the sentiment of how much they were interested in holding on to their economic advantage, which was the black slave. And to me, that even for whatever economic reasons are, and listen, economics are a good reason to separate from a government and such as that. And listen, the Boston Tea Party and taxation and all those things are great reasons for keeping a government at bay, or not giving your consent or your permission. Of course, taxation is part of that. But the immoral action of thinking that you can keep a people enslaved is put them on a footing that was not going to have God sanction and back, and nor that would be righteous or a good cause. What I'm interested in, because I'm interested in the free and independent states, I'm interested in their knowledge and particular language about the limitations of the federal government, and that the power that these states have to cede. All states have the power to leave the union without any kind of threat. Do you understand? Nobody can compel you to be with them. The opening of the Declaration of Independence says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. That is your right to be left alone. Nobody has a right to say, you have to be with me. No one individually, no one collectively. People come into the union by vote and by permission of the Congress. No state can come in and say, you have to let us in. Congress will vote whether they want you in or not. The same would go with leaving the union. You can say, bye-bye. And what are you going to do? Threaten us to stay in the union? That's a crock of crap. Now, no state in America is going to leave the union. Don't worry. We have too many children in the states to actually think that the states are mature enough to handle themselves. Sorry. Too many people on the government teat. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Unless we can kick the money out of the states, it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to say, we don't want to be told what to do, but we still want all the goodies. Please give us the goodies. Never going to happen. The easiest way to find out whether you even want to secede is just kick the money out, folks. But then you'll have to pay your bills on your own. If you don't want mommy and daddy telling you when to go to bed, then you're going to have to, clean your room and be in before 10 o'clock, okay? Otherwise, move out, pay your own bills like grown-ups do, okay? So these states have to grow up. Nobody's going to secede. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's just ridiculous. And so here you have states complaining about what this administration is doing, because Trump is pulling back the money. He's pulling back the money, and the whiners don't like it. And look, I'm not saying the whiners are red or blue. I'm just saying the whiners don't like it that you're pulling back the money. That's just the way it works, So these states are free and independent if they would be responsible enough to be free and independent. But they are connected, on the apron strings of the federal government. And you know what? The federal government likes that, because the more that the states don't need them, it's right out of V for Vendetta. When all of a sudden they started seeing that people weren't going along with the government, he says, if anybody interrupts us or tries to tell us that we can't do this, whatever it is, he says, we're going to let them understand that we're going to force them to this, and they're going to understand that they need us. Sorry, not really. That's not the way good relationships work. That's not where love and agreement works. So it is refreshing to read these. And the thing about it is that what I have to do is to be able to read, and I would favor the southern states, but not on the moral basis of slavery. It's just bad. And so that's why they lost, in my humble opinion, was because they didn't have the moral high road. Okay. And so that's just the way life works out. But their arguments, I want their arguments. I want the education they had, that these states are free and independent, and that they have the right to associate, the right to disassociate. There is no right of association. Okay. No one has a right to be with you without your agreement. It's the right to disassociate. Now, don't confuse the right to associate with the right of peaceably assembling. Okay. There is a constitutional protection of the right to peacefully assemble. Okay. So that doesn't say that one person has to be with somebody. To peacefully assemble mean that people can gather together and that government can't interrupt that, at least allegedly. Okay. So anyway, so I'm studying that on these. I want to read over what these southern states, what their reasoning for the separation, because one of the best reads in world history is the Declaration of Independence and how they declared their separation from Great Britain, okay, and the King of England. So that's out there, and that's I think that this information is exciting. I'm hopefully it's empowering, and if you have some comments on any of this stuff, by all means write it in the questions on there, and then if I get through there, I'll see if we can get you some information or engage in some of the conversation on that. That'll be awesome. And if you think that any of our videos are thought provoking or interesting, please pass them on. And you can put clips and things up on your social media. That'll be a kind of fun thing. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see if we can engage and set some things up. Oh, I guess we have some chats. I want to see. Hey, thanks for being on. Let's see if we can see who's on in the chat today. All right. Hey, here's Nano. Any thoughts on New Hampshire becoming the first state to pass strategic Bitcoin reserve bill into law? Yeah, it happened. I mean, so Kelly Ayotte, our governor, went along with that. So, hey, New Hampshire first in the union again. So that's awesome. I love that. Hey, that's juxtaposed to the International Monetary Fund coming into New Hampshire at Bretton Woods. And so New Hampshire now, being an advocate of that, I'd say financial freedom. Screw the banks, let them fail. And of course, I think Bitcoin is going to be pretty powerful. And I'm not sure. I'll read that law to see what passed. You mentioned the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Maybe if the state takes some of its assets and buys into Bitcoin as a protection for its assets, that might be. I'd say that'd be pretty awesome, which is a lot of financial institutions are doing as a backing for themselves. I think that's just phenomenal. John says Southerners were slapped as war criminals. Now we all are. Yeah, I mean, there's some of that. I mean, and again, you have to, not everybody had slaves, and of course, slavery is immoral. And so, when you have an immoral, stand, it's very difficult to expect that you're going to have some good vibe come from that. There's a lot of data that's not being taught in schools on, Southern history and the conversation about that. So that's important to look at. The simplistic thing of that slavery is absolutely was huge, and certainly was a moral issue that was on the plate. But the expansion of the power of the federal government was not a slavery issue. Okay, that you can see how that grows. They were forced to sign on. Of course, the people in the states are the source of energy. I would agree. Hey, Orlando, good to see you on there. Yeah, I was just updating some of your stuff there. I've got your stuff in our schedule. That's cool. Glad you're on. That's cool. And then we have Douglas here. He says, does IRS for us pay federal state tax? Oh, if you have a federal income tax liability, you would have a state income tax liability. If you don't have a federal, then you wouldn't have a state income tax liability. That's true. Because if you look at, most of the time when you're looking at your state's income tax laws, look it up, look at their forms, see where it begins, see where the presumption begins, because their forms usually begin with what information you're putting on a federal income tax form. So if you don't file, they have no power, correct? No, it's not about not filing, okay? If you don't have a tax liability, it's not about not filing, okay? Because you can have an income tax liability, but if you don't file, then you're in violation of tax law. And then, of course, the states and the IRS, they exchange information. Do the citizens of the U.S. have to file with the IRS? Absolutely. All U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens have a filing requirement and have to file and pay. The question is not about whether U.S. citizens have to file. The question is, what type of citizen are you? Are you a citizen of the District of Columbia, or are you a citizen of your state? Be careful, because there's many definitions of the term United States. So be careful when it's like you say, do citizens of the U.S. Because let me just say this for the record. I am a United States citizen and I'm not a United States citizen. Both those are true. It all depends on the definition of the term United States, So but that's the thing that's on the plate. So all right. We have anything else we want to bring up, Michael? Are we good for tonight? Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I'm thankful to talk to you about the 14th Amendment and its implications. And listen, don't be looking for your government to give you privileges and immunities. Just hold on and expect the only just government is a government that will secure rights. Anything else the government does is unjust. So just understand that. All right. So, be free, live free or die, baby, right? Hey, New Hampshire and that Bitcoin thing's pretty good. Hey, we'll see you next Wednesday night. We've moved our time from 7 to 8. And so be sure to go to DestinationFreedom.org and check us out, and let us help you eliminate your income tax liability. And that'll be a joy. You'll be able to keep all of your earnings here. Okay. All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. Have a great night. We'll take care. See you.